By and welcome to the Teacher's Call. At this time, all lines are in a listen-only mode. I would now like to turn the conference over to the Vice President of the United States, Mr. Joe Biden. Please go ahead.
Hey, folks. Thanks for taking my call. The reason we made it this late, we wanted the folks on the West Coast to be able to be in on this. And what I'd like to talk about is the jobs bill. And by the way, Randi at AFT is on, your president, and Dennis and the NEA, and they're going to have a few things to say after I finish. And I do apologize for this not being able to be interactive. Hopefully there's several thousand of you on it, and as a practical matter, it wouldn't work very well. And besides, they told me it'd cost $12,000 to be able to do it. I figured we better spend the money other ways. And in the meantime, I have had a chance to speak to Randi and Dennis separately and together. They've asked me a bunch of questions, and I'm sure they're going to be available as well. And this is not the first time you're going to hear from me. And I'm calling for two reasons: tell you what's in this jobs bill, and also I'm going to be asking for your help. But then let me tell you how I'd like to go about this. I'm going to talk a little bit about what specifically in this relating to teachers, and what's in this relating to investment in education in terms of the school construction, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how that gets broken out. And then I'd like to talk to you about how, I come from a family where you got a lot of teachers, and, we are the quintessential middle class. And so there's a big pieces of this that are just designed to help the middle class get by this really difficult time beyond jobs and education. And in terms of tax cuts and the rest, I'm going to talk about that. Then I'm going to talk to you about the priorities here and why we can afford this, and why we're going to pay for it, and what we're going to have to do to pay for it. And then I might mention a few words about the independent validators out there, economic prognosticators, economic models, econometric models, why they think this will work. And so let me begin by talking about this plan is designed overall to put people back to work, but the major part of this plan is the investment in education, both to keep teachers on the job and to modernize our schools. We know how badly you're hurting. Just since January, we've lost 129,000 education jobs. I know some people thought when I was managing the Recovery Act, when we said that we're over 400,000 jobs in education that were saved or sustained, people thought that was just not true, but you found out it is true. And that's why this plan contains $30 billion, a $30 billion teacher layoff prevention fund, which are going to keep 280,000 educators in the classroom and working in the school buildings. The plan also contains another $25 billion for school modernization that's going to repair or improve over 35,000 public schools, because we know students can't learn effectively when their classrooms are literally crumbling. And we know, for example, we spend on our public schools, we spend more money on heating and the energy costs for those buildings than we do on all the money put together in terms of school books and other direct assistance to students. And here we're out there, we have real problems. If we were able to make the energy investments in the schools and modernize their plant equipment, you save $2 to $4 billion, and doing that. It also means there's not squeezing out, deciding whether or not they're going to heat the school or keep a teacher. But at any rate, and there are also steps that are going to create jobs and help making sure that we focus on what we do best, educating our kids. Now, let me talk about the $30 billion fund that will prevent the layoff of another 280,000 teachers in 2011 and 2012 school year, and then going in 12 and 13. In addition to teachers, Employees supported with this program funds include, among others, principals, assistant principals, academic coaches, in-service teachers, trainers, classroom aides, counselors, librarians, etc., including occupational therapists, nurses, custodians, the people who make the schools run. And we have stronger restrictions on how the money has to be spent in education. So we don't want governors in other states or your local officials taking the money and putting this stuff in a rainy day fund. Is to keep you at work and even be able to rehire teachers. Now, the $25 billion for school construction, that will modernize over 35,000 schools. And here's how it works. $10 billion goes for the 100 largest high-need public school districts in the country. Within 60 days, they'll get a formula amount proportionate to their Title I Part A allocation. The remaining $15 billion would go to states to allocate, and funding will be based on Title I shares as well. The states are required to obligate this money, this $15 billion, by September 30th, 2012 at the latest, and half the funding will go to local school districts on a formula basis, and the other half by application and competition. They'd have to get the formula money to the local districts in 3 to 6 months to get this moving. Now, these funds can be used for emergency repair and renovation, greening and energy efficiency, asbestos abatement, new labs and technological upgrade, modernizations, and modifications to comply with the Americans with Disability Act. Now, the background here is the reason why we focus on the schools. The average school out there is 40 years old. As I said, the cost of maintaining facilities has a huge impact on local budgets. We spend $6 billion annually on energy bills, and as I said before, that's more than we spend on computers and textbook combined. And there's an accumulated backlog. Well, people say, well, are these, quote, shovel ready? Are you ready to move in this right away? There is an accumulated backlog of deferred maintenance and repairs that amounts to $270 billion on our public schools. And there's a number of examples you could all give me if this were interactive. For example, Baltimore Freedom Academy. Broken lights are the least of that school's problem. Its 1960-era building hasn't had any major upkeep since its construction. Its students must often dodge falling ceiling tiles and, scattering roaches and bathrooms that are missing and the stall doors that are off, etc. Fannie Mae Bush Elementary School in Winchester, Kentucky, 54-year-old school, dealt with flooding after the water pipes burst, raw waste spews into the halls after the sewage line was burst. There's got 29 kids squeezing in their rooms. They're built for 20, etc. They have 2 toilets for 300 kids. That is not unusual. Similar to, the Denmark Omar Elementary School in Denmark, South Carolina, the cafeterias, the ceilings caving in. I could go on and on. You know the schools you teach in, the ones that really need the help, and this would provide it. And it's going to put a lot of people to work renovating these schools. It's also a net job creator. And then we have $5 billion for community colleges. The economic downturn has put an awful lot of stress on state and local community college resources, and agri-community college needs of a similar nature are $100 billion. So $5 billion isn't going to solve the problem, but it's going to put people to work immediately. It's going to have a real immediate impact on their circumstance. Now, let me go back. That's the first thing. That's how, and we've got a lot more detail on this for you as to how this affects both school construction as well as the jobs portion of the program. But beyond that, as I said, the quintessential middle-class person is a school teacher. They're making a middle-class wage if they have a job, and we have to do something for you all. You go out there now, there's an awful lot of your colleagues are going to, maybe some of you listening, going to go to bed at night staring at the ceiling, wondering whether or not you're going to be able to sleep in that same bed 2 months from now, or whether you're going to be out of that house because of foreclosure. And so we do two things. One, 6 million of you out there are folks out there are paying their mortgage rate at 6% plus in interest rates. Mortgage rates are down to 4%. We're going to make it easier for people able to refinance where banks won't let them by fundamentally waiving the fees, which are expensive to refinance, as well as those of you who are not, or some of you are underwater but paying your mortgages, others who are really just barely staying above water. We're going to make it easier for you to be able to refinance at 4%. That means that if you're able to do that, on average, that's an extra $2,000 a year in your pocket. That means your property taxes can be paid. That means you can maintain the cost of the liability insurance and homeowners insurance. In the family I come from, that's a difference between able to be, hang around and pay for that house and not. And the way I was raised. And so I'm sure a lot of you are in a similar position or know people are. In addition, we cut the payroll tax. Right now, you pay a FICA tax of 6.2% every time you get your pay stub. We were able to reduce it by $1,000 last year. If we don't act, your taxes are going to go up $1,000. But this year, we're proposing to cut the tax in half, not just maintain it, but cut it in half, so that would be an average additional $1,500 in every paycheck, not every pay, for the year in the paychecks you collect. So that's the ability to have another $3,500 if you refinance your house, which can make a difference. In addition, we're encouraging small business owners, which will not affect you getting hired, but it will affect your communities and affect your neighbors. We're going to provide for small business owners to have their payroll tax cut from 6.2% to down to 3.1%. That means you got a small business operation hiring, has 30 people working for them. Well, 20 people work for them. They're going to get a $30,000 tax cut. If they have 40 people working for them, it's $60,000. That right off the bat is going to help them do one of two things: increase wages or hire somebody else on, or a minor expansion. Now, the second thing is that employer will get up to a $9,000 tax break in addition if they hire a veteran. We got a lot of guys and a lot of women. Over 2 million people have been thrown into harm's way in Iraq and Afghanistan. They're the highest unemployment rate in the country. They shouldn't have to go fight and risk their life and limb, and a lot of them getting injured and come back and have to fight for a job. So we're doing everything to encourage small business owners, and that's up to $50 million. Small business owners to be able to go out there and hire veterans, and also the long-term unemployed. They also get a tax break if they hire somebody who's been unemployed for 6 months or more. So there's a lot in here to promote employment, and it's designed to get people to work and to let businesses have the inclination to expand, to help them to expand. Because, look, the corporations are fat with money out there. There's $1.7 trillion in their coffers. The reason they're not spending it and hiring people and expanding their operation is they don't think there's going to be customers they're going to be there to buy because they don't have jobs or they have stagnant incomes. And the reason why the banks, which are flush with money as well, aren't lending the money. They're worrying the number of the people they're going to lend the money to aren't going to have houses to live in or the money to pay them back. So we got to get a virtuous cycle moving here. And so these are ways in which to get people back to work, to give significant tax breaks to ordinary Americans. Now, look, as the President said, we have to have priorities. It's not that we're against people getting tax breaks who are wealthy. I mean, it's just about being fair. And let me give you a couple of examples. if you go out there and take a look at what we're going to do to close some of the loopholes that exist out there, for example, $30 billion to hire, back or keep a total of 280,000 teachers employed. We can either do that, or we can continue to give a $37 billion tax break to people who or to the oil companies who are doing incredibly well, don't need our help, said they didn't, but our Republican colleagues and a few Democrats said they're going to continue that tax break, a loophole for gas and oil. It's not needed, and there's an example. We can spend $37 billion continuing this loophole, or $30 billion for 280,000 teachers in a classroom. We can either cut the payroll tax in half for small businesses, or we can continue to protect the loophole with they call it, recognizing inventory costs. There's a thing called LIFO. That's a complicated thing, but the bottom line is there's $70 billion tax loophole that lets companies with rising inventory costs take excessive deductions when they sell items out of that inventory. That's about what it costs to cut the payroll tax for all small businesses to hire thousands of workers. We can modernize our 35,000 schools, or we can keep letting hedge fund managers, and not bad guys, but hedge fund managers pay at 15% tax. You guys pay at 28% or higher. And it's a $20 billion a year tax break that allowing them to avoid ordinary income taxes, instead letting them pay at a lower capital gains rate. And it's just not fair. So the idea is, what do you want to do? Keep that tax loophole, it costs $20 billion a year, or modernize 35,000 public schools and put people to work? I'll give you a few more examples. We can either keep cops and firefighters on the job, which we do in this bill. There's a total of $5 billion for them combined. Or we can give corporate jet owners a special tax break. Right now, if American Airlines goes out and buy a new Boeing jet, they can write off, deduct the cost of that jet, but the guy goes out and buys a new G5, a corporation buys a small jet, they can write the cost off a total of 6 times faster. That costs $3 billion, that one tax loophole for corporate jet owners. They're not bad guys. I don't care if they have jets, but why in God's name we're going to spend $3 billion to give them that tax break you don't even give to commercial airlines? And so, it's just the American Jobs Act is going to help towns across the country hire and retain first responders. The total cost is $5 billion. I'll give you one more, and I'm sorry to go on. I could go on forever on this. I was the guy negotiating this debt ceiling deal and the tax cut. Reducing the long-term debt, which we did first crack at $1 trillion. Another $1.5 trillion is coming up. But here's the deal. I said, hey guys, in these meetings, right now, if a corporate jet takes off, it pays $25 to file a flight plan. If a big airline takes off, it pays multiples of that for every passenger, or roughly the same amount for every passenger. They pay thousands of dollars. Now, the rationale is you pay for the air traffic controller, you pay for the federal cost of running the airports. Well, guess what? For an air traffic controller to follow a blip on the screen that is a corporate jet to keep it from running into something else is no more difficult or no less difficult than to follow a 747. So if you just raise the fee for a flight plan for a corporate jet from $25 per flight to $100 per flight, that's $12 billion. $12 billion. And you tell me they can't afford to pay $75 more to get in a corporate jet to take off and land? So look, there's a lot of ways in which, without raising unfairly the taxes of ordinary or even extraordinary people, that we can pay for all the stuff we're talking about here. And the president is insisting that all this be paid for in the deficit reduction package he's about to introduce next week. Last point, and I'm sorry to go on so long, but this is really important for educators and education. The last point is that I think, I've been around the Congress a long time. And as you probably read in the paper, I get on extremely well with my Republican colleagues. I mean, I trust them when I deal with them, and I think they trust me. At least that's what they, in fact, I'm sure they do. But here's the deal. When the president announced his plan at the joint session of Congress, I was sitting next to Speaker Boehner, and I've negotiated at length with Eric Cantor, a conservative Republican leader, a good guy, an honest guy. Both of them said very positive things about this bill because they acknowledge that everything in this bill are things that the former Republican presidents and Republican members of the Congress have supported in the past. So I was pretty hopeful that they would, in fact, that we had a chance of getting this passed. Well, if you go online and get to Politico.com, which is a pretty accurate inside kind of publication that comes out every day. In Politico, there's a big headline on the front page that says GOP looks at jobs plan amid grumbling. And it points out in the article how the positive things said by the Republican speaker as well as by the Republican leader they're getting a lot of pushback from their guys. I'm going to quote from the article. Obama is on the ropes. Why do we appear ready to hand him a win? Said one senior Republican aide who requested anonymity to discuss the matter freely. And it goes on to speak to a very powerful member of the leadership, a guy named Pete Sessions from Texas, small guy, I think he heads up the Republican Re-elect Committee. He goes on and points out that we shouldn't be helping these guys. He said, I note the president's dismal approval ratings in the economy. And he goes on to point out, he said, over the recess, I found people angry at Congress, but not at us, so why are we going to help them? I'm paraphrasing. So look, folks, they got to hear from you. I know there's a lot of Republicans on this call, and there's a lot of independents, and that's good. This is not Republican or Democrat. This is about getting middle-class people in a position where they can get their head above water and start to get this economy moving again. So I'm asking you to contact your local officials, Democrat, Republican, Independents. Contact them all. Contact the Democrats, too, and tell them there's no reason why we cannot pass this jobs bill now. And you have independent validators like Moody's and others who estimate. We're not making the estimate. We're letting them make the estimates. These outside groups, they're estimating that this could grow the GDP by between 1.5% and 2%. They're talking about it creating as many as 1.9 million jobs. The point is, nobody's saying this isn't positive for the economy. We're ready to compromise with the Republicans, but only compromise on things that if they have a better way of putting more teachers in the classroom, a better way of creating more jobs, a better way of giving tax breaks to the middle class, we're all for it. We have no pride in ownership here, authorship. If they have a better, what we're not prepared to compromise on is not doing anything. No is no longer an alternative because the country's in trouble. Conclude by saying, the president said it in his speech, we know the election's 14 months away. We're big boys. We know this is going to be a tough electoral fight, as it should be. We have no problem with that. And we know these jobs are just a loaner, and if you all decide we're not the ones to do it for another 4 years, so be it. We're going to make our best case and let the people speak. But in the meantime, average Americans cannot wait 14 months. These are things that Democrats and Republicans have supported in the past without any ideological difference. They should support it now and get people back to work, particularly teachers in the classroom. So thank you all very much for listening. I'm going to turn this over now to Randi and Dennis. I don't know who's going first, but thank you for listening to me. And as Randi and Dennis will tell you, I'm available to you anytime. I'll be seeing some of you in your communities. But again, we need this done now to help average middle-class people who are just getting the living devil beat out of them. Thank you for listening. Randi, Dennis, it's all yours.